Say something.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I know there was some question.
No
Just
problem.
go at the end whenever.
You're going to go after Josh.
That'd be great.
Okay,
Thank you.
No, you're okay. Esainai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Esainai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Al yitin lamod raglecha hayanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka ve'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikora, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad olam. Al mikomo yavo v'shalom. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to everyone who has tuned into our service, the broadcast of this funeral service for Garry Micflikier. Thank you especially to our pallbearers. It is our tradition and our custom to begin with a psalm. We've chosen Psalm 121, Shir Lama'alot, a song for those who ascend. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. You see, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your protection, your guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God guards your going and coming now and forever. May Garry go unto God in peace. Hatzur tamim paulo ki chol racha mishpat el emunah ve'inav el tzadik v'yashar hu tzadik atah Adonai lamidu lahachayot asher biyadcha pigadon kol ruchot chalil lecha zichroneinu limchot v'yihiyu na'einecha barachamim aleinu v'kuchot ki lecha Adon harachamim v'haslichot Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach yehi shem Adonai mevorach V'hu rachum yechaper avon v'lo yashchid v'hirba lashiv apo v'lo yirkol chamatov v'yashov ve'afar al haaretz shaya ve'aruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher netana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May our beloved soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and may God send comfort to those who mourn and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. Again, thank you to everyone who is braving the cold and being here, and to everyone who has tuned in. That is exactly what we are here today, to honor Garry Micflikier and to comfort his loved ones who are now in mourning. His Hebrew name was Gershon Ruvain ben Yankel V'Sura, the son of Sarah and Jacob Micflikier, Zichronam Livracha, of blessed memory. Today we come together as a community, family, friends, both near and far, to pay Garry the ultimate respect Jewish tradition has to offer, which is to accompany him here to his final resting place. And we have come together to say goodbye. Garry passed away Sunday, the 12th day in the Hebrew month of Adar. He was 74, having just celebrated his 74th birthday a few weeks ago at a special family get-together. 74 wasn't always, but these days it is young. It is too soon. It is still when someone can very much, and in Garry's case, was in the prime of his life. Jewish teachings, from them we learn we are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is better than constant sickness. It's been over 7 years since Garry's diagnosis. The past year, this past 6 months, and last few especially, have gotten progressively more difficult and unbearable. It is our hope that Garry is now at peace and at rest. Our tradition continues to teach that as a drop of water is in the sea and a grain of sand on the shore, these are like our days in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time. Health, wealth, even life passes away. But a good reputation endures forever. And today, we have come together to pay tribute to that good reputation. We're going to get to hear eulogies and words of tribute from Josh, Garry's nephew, and also from Sarah, Garry's niece. I'll just give a few words of introduction. In our Jewish tradition, special people often have special birth stories, and Garry Micflikier was no exception. second son of Holocaust survivors from Poland, Sarah and Jacob, Garry was born at sea, aboard the ship the Samaria, while his parents and older brother Alan, who was almost 2 at the time, were on their way to Canada and a new life. The family really knew no one in Winnipeg at the beginning, so Garry and Alan, brothers, 2 years apart, spent and were forced to spend a lot of their time, maybe all of their time together. A not unexpected dynamic developed between them that lasted until today. A photo of the two and the story that goes with it serve as a perfect metaphor for this relationship. In the picture, Alan is holding a ball and Garry is holding chocolate, armed with a huge smile. The backstory, I'm told, was that Alan was originally given the chocolate and Garry the ball. But after throwing such a massive tantrum, the switch was made. Alan, the older brother, was coaxed into agreeing with the new arrangement, and Garry smiled in the picture for all time as if he had won the battle. Garry Micflikier was a North Ender at heart and was very proud of that. His father Jacob got into the grocery store business, and the first store was at Luxton and St. Cross. The family home was just a few blocks south on Bannerman. Garry went to Luxton School in St. John's and was so fond of the memories he had of his childhood and growing up in that neighborhood with those neighborhood friends. It should be noted, Garry maintained many relationships from childhood throughout his life. The same can be said even for law school classmates. With Garry Micflikier, there was always very much the potential of making a friend for life. It was important to Garry to take a road trip through the old neighborhood recently and to bring his great-nephews, Max and Zev, who live in Winnipeg, along for the ride. The first visit, with Garry pointing out all the important spots along the way, was so special they even made the trip a second time. After a BA at the University of Winnipeg, Garry went to law school at the University of Manitoba, class of 1974. The website for Collecus Micflikier Manuk and Green says Garry is retired, but he never really did retire. His career in law spanned, therefore, nearly 50 years. And throughout it, 5 decades, he was diligent, thoughtful, meticulous, and well-respected, just as he was really in life. That's because Garry was a kind soul and a character. His sense of humor was noteworthy, if you were on one of the receiving ends of one of his many teases. At his core, he was a selfless mensch. Helping people fueled him in the most genuine way. He would routinely go out of his way just to help somebody. No one felt this more than his family. Family was everything to Garry. We want to acknowledge his family at this moment. His brothers and sisters-in-law, Alan and Reva, Irva and Susan. His nephews and nieces, Daniel and Heather, Sarah and Dorian, Jacob and Alicia, Aaron and Amber, Ben and Josh. And his great-nephews and great-nieces, Max, Zev, Emmy, Grayson, Jordan, and Rin. They were the most cherished people in his life. Garry really appreciated quality time with them, and any time they were together having fun. Look at how everyone's having fun, he'd often say out loud at family gatherings. Other people being happy made him happy. Even neighbors making more than the respectable level of noise late at night. But think of the fun they're having, Garry would say. He always wanted pictures of these moments, to preserve them, to keep the special times we all had fun safe, forever. It's poetic that Garry's funeral should take place today, on Purim, possibly the most joyous day of the year on the Jewish calendar, because there's nothing that brought Garry more joy than seeing other people celebrate and enjoy life. He would routinely reminisce about the past, tell the same stories over and over and over, and remark how things had changed so much. Time stands still for no one was one of his favorite, most repeated sayings. Garry knew it well. He was so proud of his family, everything his nieces and nephews and great-nieces and great-nephews were up to. Garry Micflikier was a man of simple tastes. He's lucky he had family who stocked his fridge. Otherwise, I asked them, what would he eat? They said he had a can opener. Tuna was mentioned a few times, as well as a famed conversation Garry once got into with another relative about all the things that could be done with canned tuna and canned salmon. If you had thoughts on canned fish, Garry Micflikier was your man. Jacob, one of his nephews, laughed, remembering how amazed Garry was learning Jacob could cook for himself. What do you make? What do you do? A man of simple tastes. But Garry's ability to love and to care, though it seems simple, was actually anything far from it. It was deep, it was special and rare in this life. To care for people the way he did, Garry Micflikier, for his family, for his friends, it is true empathy. To truly understand and share the feelings of others. It's what Jewish tradition calls chesed, often translated as loving kindness or compassion, but what it really is, what it's meant to be, is empathy, putting others first in the most sincere way. It's a core ethical virtue in Jewish tradition, and it's one of the three pillars, it's said in a famous teaching, on which the world is built: Torah, Avodah, and Gemilut Chasadim. Right up there with Torah study and the service of God, the acts of chesed, the acts of Garry Micflikier. His life, therefore, will always serve as an inspiration. Gone but never forgotten, the good reputation of Garry Micflikier's life is sure to endure. May his life be for a blessing. I'd like to call up Josh now, on behalf of the family. I'm just going to leave that there, okay?
So I sat trying to write something for Garry for a long time, wondering, what do I say, how do I say it, and why do I need to say it? It's the first time I've ever had to write something like this, and honestly, it's going to be the hardest too. Today it feels like I've lost a brother and a best friend. Although Garry and I were always close, when I became a lawyer, it gave us a lot more common ground, and since that time we spent a lot of time talking together, on the phone, sitting together, and just enjoying one another's company. I know my parents appreciate everything Garry has always done for me and my family, and although he never liked to accept praise, I hope deep down he always knew what he did for me and how thankful we all were for him. Not only did Garry make sure I was cared for, but he did the same for his brothers. When my dad's parents passed away, Garry made sure my dad and Uncle Alan didn't have to worry about a thing. When my dad was in dental school and Alan was just starting to practice medicine, Garry's the one who took care of their parents' estate. Even after that, Garry was the one who took care of the properties, and although he occasionally complained about it, like a good Micflikier does, he did it when no one else was willing to, and always made sure to tell us that everything was A-okay, one of his favorite things to say. Garry was special. He uplifted rooms. He was jovial. And even though he loved to say he was cynical, I do think he was a closeted optimist. Speaking for myself, Garry was my biggest cheerleader, and I believed he was everybody's in our immediate family. He cared deeply for me and my brothers, and although it's cliche, he really did mean a lot to all of us. But Garry cared about everyone in his life. Whether it was the nieces and nephews or grandnieces and grandnephews, we were his family, and we were the children he never had. Whenever opportunity struck, Garry made sure to break out the cameras and take photos with all of us. He made sure we were fed with chocolates and Coke even until the end, and he could never get enough of those chocolate-covered raisins, even though we had our fill too. Garry was also interested in all of our social lives. I remember one time last winter, my parents had gone out of town to Phoenix, and I threw a bit of a party, unbeknownst to them. Garry found out and decided to take a stop by and see if there was any music he could hear. Let's just say he idled in his car too long, and me and my friend Daniel ended up going outside to push Garry's car out of the snow. But that was Garry. He just wanted to be involved, Whether it was social, academic, athletic, or anything else, he just wanted to be there for us in any capacity that he could. He lived vicariously through us. That being said, I do think he stopped by our house on one of his 10 p.m. runs to Walmart like he always makes. And being interested in the social lives, it took a while for us to convince him that it was called a bar and not a disco anymore. But Garry had a lot of stories. He had a lot of great anecdotes. He always loved telling us about how he used to sit on the radiators, not the radiators, in UM Center and smoke cigarettes with his friends. And just like Matthew alluded to earlier, he would say, "Oh boy, times have changed, let me tell you." But he was interested in everything, even interested in what the latest fashion was. He made sure to get Daniel's son Max to try on his bar mitzvah suit for him before he passed, and I can guarantee you he broke the camera out for that too. And I know that myself and my brothers here have made a concentrated effort to wear stuff Garry has given us today. A lot of the time we spent together would be speaking about the NFL and sitting down on Sunday watching those games. In commercials, obviously, he would ask us to flip back and forth between Turner Classic Movies to see what was on. I still don't think I'm ever going to be as impressed as I was the night my grandma brought over a card game about classic movies, and Garry could name more old actors than anybody in the room combined. But we had a lot of fun. That was the one thing that was always common. We went to the cabin last summer, and although Garry didn't drink, he had the rare alcoholic beverage, and he was dancing in our room. Guy could move. We were talking about things, and then he would always say, "Oh, I'm a little bit stoned," or "I'm a little bit high." But it took us a while to convince him that that's not what you call being buzzed anymore. Garry was appreciative of everything, and anything anybody ever did for him. And he never took anything for granted, so I'd like to just share a few thank yous right now. First, to my mom. I don't know how you did it attending his appointments, making sure he got to treatments, arranging home care, scheduling overnights at his home. I'm sure he told you, but he always said to me that he would be lost without you. And although he's gone, I wanted to say that everybody who cared for Garry really appreciated everything you did for him. To Riva, thank you for always making sure he was fed. I cannot understate that I think Garry ate better over the last 6 months than he did in his entire life. The meals you made him and dropped off for him were far better than the boiled chicken he grew up on. And he would be the first to tell you that. Now, that being said, he did always ask for rye bread and sweet and sour sauce on the side, his 2 traditional accoutrements for every meal. To my dad, thank you for being there. Thank you for the countless nights you slept there. And thank you for showing me what it means to be a true brother and what it means to truly care for somebody. To my Uncle Alan, your afternoon visits, bringing by Max and Zev over, I know those were the highlights of his day. Garry loved the 2 of those kids more than anything, and they were all he could talk about after those visits. To Garry's friends, and in particular Bill Pooley and Garry Minook, I just want to say thank you for your visits and your phone calls. I know they meant a lot to Garry and meant a lot to us. Today we lost a brother, an uncle, and a best friend, but most of all, just a genuine person that we all cared about. And although this may have been the worst winter of Garry's life due to his worsening illness, I know it was also his best, because he was constantly surrounded by family, and that's all Garry wanted.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try not to take too much time. I live in Phoenix, so this is cold. But I think it's kind of interesting that we're here talking about Garry, and it's the 2 lawyers in the family that decided to speak today. Didn't even notice it, right? He started it all. Just wanted to say a couple of things that came to mind after chatting with family and friends. The word that I consistently think of when I think of Garry is nostalgia. He was so nostalgic. Everything he did in life fed out of that nostalgia. He loved, as we all know, collecting things, whether it be appliances or briefcases. I can't even count the number of briefcases he has. He loved old movies. He had such a nostalgia for old movies. He loved reminiscing with stories about the past. His memory was incredible. And he loved driving through the old neighborhood, as has already been mentioned today. Josh already mentioned, and I am going to repeat it because it's just our childhood. We grew up with him coming over to visit and providing candy, chocolates, Coke. Back at least when we were growing up, my brothers and I are a little bit older than these three boys, and back then it was also packs of gum. It wasn't just like a pack of gum, it was like those 5 packs that you get at the grocery store that he would bring over. Good thing my parents let us chew gum. I consistently woke up with gum in my hair the next day. But that was because Garry came over and we wanted to make sure that we participated in the things that he brought for us, and that was his way of giving and showing. I do have a question for everybody here. Raise your hand if you've ever been accused of talking too much during movies or TV shows. Go ahead, raise your hand. Set of hands. Anybody that's ever been accused of talking too much during TV shows. Okay, keep your hand up if you're a Micflikier. Okay? Now, keep your hand up if you ever accused Garry of doing it more than anybody. That is a common thing. He loved watching movies and TV shows with everybody, but he would talk through the entirety of it all. But he loved it so much, he was known to fall on the floor laughing from some of the things that he would watch. He loved spending time with everybody, especially at the lake, out at Lake of the Woods. I know my brother Daniel would take him for boat rides regularly. He loved going and feeding the seagulls at an area we had called Seagull Island. He would take the breadcrumbs and he would have so much joy throwing out those breadcrumbs to them. It makes me immediately think of his laugh, which I will always remember. My younger brother Jacob once took him on a Sea-Doo ride. My understanding is that he tried to do kind of donuts, spins, and take him for some fun. Garry was enjoying it so much that I don't think either of them noticed, but at some point the waves were too hard or the speed was too fast, or Jacob flipped his head back, Garry flipped his head forward, and he came home with a nosebleed. Did Garry get upset? No, he was laughing so hard, bleeding from the nose. He just enjoyed the experience. My memory personally of him from the lake, and frankly from the lake, is the showers that he would take. I know that sounds weird. He would go down to the lake, down at the dock, and he would get soap and shampoo, and he would cover himself so much that you could barely see his face, like his mouth and his eyes and his nose and everything. He would cover himself and lather himself up so much, and then just jump into the lake to wash off. That's a visual that I will always have. And on top of that, the other visual I consistently will have of him is his ability to sleep anywhere. Give him a couch, give him a parka, and that's all he needed. He would lie down on the couch or even in a chair, put a parka over him, right? Everybody that knows, if he would be offered the bed. He never used the bed. He would just fall asleep on the couch with a parka on top of him, and that was his way. He didn't need anything else. What he did need is to have family around him. And we're so glad that in the last number of years, he was able to move from the Garden City area out to the South End. It was due to the help of all of his family members, my parents. I know Clarice and Neil Baker really helped find a location for him where he lived near them. He really appreciated having them nearby. They went to visit him on a regular basis more recently. I know that he was assisted more recently by Karen Vicker, who would bring food, is my understanding. And he was so appreciative of that. And it was just so nice that he had that place that he really was very proud of. He was very proud to live in his more recent home. He loved to have the ability to have people nearby and have people come visit him. For him, having the visitors was a badge of honor. He loved to know that people cared. He loved to know that people came to visit him. It's my understanding he would look out into the road and see all the cars and say, those are there for me. And he loved it. He loved to know that people were there for him. And I want Garry to know that today people are here for him. His great nephews and nieces were so important to him. Even though he wasn't able to be around all of them all the time. My family, my younger brother's family, we live out of country. But he would FaceTime frequently. He would watch videos of my niece Rin playing tennis. He would FaceTime with my little one Grayson here. When I asked Grayson what he loved about Uncle Garry, he said he was cool. And I said, why? Tell me what makes him so cool. He said he was kind and special. Those were the words he gave me. With my youngest, my 2-year-old Jordan, she called him Garry. Every time they'd FaceTime, it's Uncle Garry. And he would go like this. And that was what they would just do back and forth for I don't even know how long. Max and Zev have been able to have such a special relationship with him. And I'm so happy that they've had that he had that. I know that Max has been working on debating lately. And he would practice his debates with my Uncle Garry. And I know that Garry loved doing it, and I think that Max really enjoyed that special time they had together as well. And Zev loves hockey, and they would talk hockey at trivia. Get Garry in a room talking trivia, and you've got a fight on your hands, right? Garry was good at that trivia. Now, Zev could probably give him a run for his money, but Garry loved trivia. And like Josh actually mentioned, those Turner Classic Movies, give him trivia related to Turner Classic Movies. He would give anybody a run for their money. Anybody. It goes to, again, that nostalgia that I think he had for so many things. He kept those things in his memory bank. It's been said, but I think it needs to be said again. He teased a lot. Right? If you knew Garry or you were around Garry or you were one of his nieces or nephews, you knew that's how he showed his love. He showed us, he came over and he would just tease and laugh and laugh and laugh. But it wasn't just teasing, because under that, you would always see he would defend us to the end of days. He teased, but he loved and he defended so much. His relationship with his brothers is something that I'm going to miss to see, the three of them together. Susan's laughing. I know it was complicated, and it was something that we from the outside might have laughed and watched. But, I mean, I know there were stories from when my dad and he were younger, much younger, and my dad would take the bus out to, I think it was Eaton Center, and go just for a day out, for a trip to go do something. They'd use the money that they had to get on the bus and go out to Eaton Center, and Garry wanted to follow along, and Garry would just go, and they'd just go window shopping for the day. It wasn't to purchase anything. They didn't necessarily have the funds to do that, but it seems to be that was the thing that they would go do, and Garry always wanted to follow along. My dad would have a stamp collection. Any stamp my dad got, Garry would have it soon thereafter. It's very familiar with me and my older brother, I think. we do want to make sure, Josh, I appreciate all the words that you said on behalf of you and your brothers and the whole family, but thanking the people that are here today, thanking the people that are joining us online, that are participating in this, even though they couldn't be here physically. It's important, I think, for Garry to see that people came and cared and showed up for him. I would just want to leave you with, if you could all just stop and think and remember his laugh. To me, that's what will always be there. It was pure joy. And the best thing was watching the three brothers telling stories and laughing together. So with that, I thank everybody for coming today.
Thank you to Josh and thank you to Sarah for sharing such beautiful words with all of us. We'll now chant the El Malei Rachamim, the traditional Jewish memorial prayer, in honor of Garry Micflikier. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bameromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim Uteorim Kezohar Arakia Mazirim Enishmat Gershon Ruvain Ben Yaakov Sora Shelach Leolamo Began Eidente Menuchato Anabal Harachamim Hasti Reubese Terken Afecha Leolamim Utzror Vitzror Achaim Enishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato Ve'anuach B'Shalom Amishkavo V'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Garry Micflikier, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that he find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. There will be a meal of consolation after this service at Irv and Susan's home at 40 Deersley Place. Everyone is invited to attend. Shiva will be observed by the family at synagogue services this coming week, held at Temple Shalom, morning and evening. Garry's family wanted to recognize and mention the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, the WRHA Palliative Care Donation Fund, for all of their care and help with Garry's end of life, and as a place people could consider if wanting to make a donation in Garry's memory, the WRHA Palliative Care Donation Fund. And thank you again to everyone who is attending and tuning in. In a moment, we will recite the Mourner's Kaddish and conclude our service. The family will lead us, and everyone who is here is invited to participate in the mitzvah of shoveling earth into the grave. A couple of words of explanation, and then we'll close with that ritual after the Kaddish. The act of shoveling is a way that we follow through on what we talked about at the beginning. The ultimate form of respect in Jewish tradition is to care for someone until the very end. This allows us to bury our loved one with our own kind, knowing, though sorrowful hands that once held their hands. We believe this is something very important in Jewish tradition. Most people pour 3 shovelfuls of earth. Some people use the front of the shovel, some people use the back of the shovel. Some people return the shovel to the pile of dirt as if reluctant to pass on the burden. Others turn and pass it to the next person. Whatever the ritual with which you are familiar is the ritual you should embrace to infuse this with meaning, of course. Again, the family will lead us, and then people have the opportunity to follow. There's usually a bucket that has a small shovel in it with sand, in case the big shovels are too daunting. I don't see it, so it might not be out, but it might also be on the other side of this pile that I can't see. As with anything, please be careful around the gravesite because of the icy conditions. And we just remind ourselves that though it is a painful action, it is one born of love and compassion for someone who meant so much to so many people. Earlier in the service we said the words of Job, the epitome of suffering in Jewish tradition, and we echo them here in conclusion. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken, blessed be the name of God. May Garry Micflikier's memory and life be for a blessing, as we mark that his memory will never leave our hearts and our souls. The Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabah mevorach le'olam ulamei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabah min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace and harmony on high bring peace and harmony to us, to all Israel, and to all of humanity, as again together we say amen. And to the family we offer the words of tradition and comfort. Hamakom yinachem etchem b'toch sha'ar avelei Tzion v'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted and consoled. May God comfort and console you among all those who are or who have ever been in mourning. Thank you again to everyone. We invite the family to come forward.